This is Alvin Ho, allergic to camping, hiking, and other natural disasters. I'll be playing Alvin's dad and Annabelle, aka Alvin's little sister, and Mom will be playing narrator and Alvin. We're going to be starting on Chapter 14, Avoid Disturbing Your Environment.
This is how to pitch a tent. Number 1, find a good spot. Not too high, too windy. Not too low, too wet. Unfold your tent. 3, pound some stakes into the ground. 4, follow the directions that came with the tent. 5, make some hot chocolate. 6, drink some hot chocolate. 7, reread the directions. 8, pull the stakes out of the ground. Move them around. 10, pound them in again. 11, try to remember how you did it 200 years ago when tents didn't come up with directions, and you could put one up anyway. 12, scratch your head. 13, rub your chin. 14, walk away and work on digging a pit toilet for a while. They can't see you out of this, Evan. They can't see you. 15, dig hard and fast because your kids are crying that they'd rather die than use a pit toilet, and Annabelle is walking off with some of the tent stuff and doing her own thing. 16, repeat steps 3 through 16 until your tent is standing without your kids holding it up. 17, stand back and admire. Go in and check it out. 19, don't panic. 20, find your way out of the collapsed tent. 21, repeat. When our tent was finally up for good, my dad looked pretty beat. In fact, he looked a lot like Calvin's very old bunny with the stuffing coming out.
I sure could use a nap,
he said, diving headfirst into the tent. This was good news. It meant that we didn't have to go on a scary hike up a scary mountain. Hooray! But it was also bad news. Dad? I shoved my dad a couple times. He was safely tucked inside his sleeping bag, snoring. And Annabelle and I were not safely tucked anywhere. Wake up, Dad! I cried. If you snooze, we lose. Growled my dad. That's the problem with my dad. Once he falls asleep, he's as hard to start as a dead car battery. Annabelle and I were in trouble. The keeper of the fire had no fire to keep. The keeper of the food had no food to guard. And the keeper of us all was out like a rocket into outer space. Gulp. Annabelle, I said, I think this means that I'm now the keeper of all of us.
Yep.
Said Annabelle.
Let's build traps.
How are traps going to help us?
Secret trick number 432.
Said Annabelle.
Traps catch monsters and bears. Just when they're about to grab you, oops, they'll trip and dangle, just like that.
Sound good to me. Plus, Annabelle was amazing at remembering Uncle Dennis's how to make a trap instructions.
1, don't disturb nature.
Said Annabelle. We tiptoed around our campsite, especially around our tent where my dad was sleeping.
2, wash your hands.
Said Annabelle. We rubbed dirt and sand on our hands. What you doing? Said a voice. It was Buffalo. His extra eyes were rolling around. Making traps, I said. Want some help? I asked Buffalo. Can you tie triple knots? I said, unpacking the ropes and rubber cords that my dad had packed. Sure, said Buffalo. My dad's taught me all sorts of knots and traps. Square, overhand, fisherman's, and as for traps, mangle, tangle, dangle, and strangle. I stopped. He knew all of them, just like my Uncle Dennis. Okay, you can help, I told him. First, we showed Buffalo how to tie a sapling and make it bend. Then, get that in there. Showed us how to make a snare for something heavy by throwing a cord over a branch of a regular-sized tree and setting it in a spring between 2 branches in the ground. Then we made more traps. After that, we covered our traps with mud and leaves and moss. Check your traps often, I said, finally remembering one of the rules of trap making. It's important not to let anyone be surprised for too long. We sized up the situation. There were so many traps around our camp, but you would never know. You couldn't see a single one. Uncle Dennis would be proud. Best of all, I felt a little safer, and so did Annabelle. Until I remembered something. Don't traps need bait? I asked. Sure do, said Buffalo. When I go fishing with my dad, we always use bait without it. The fish won't bite. He looked for bait. He's looking for bait now, so we can go fishing.
Bait?
Said Annabelle.
What's bait?
It's the little thing used to catch something bigger, I said. Buffalo! A voice called through the woods. Time to go! There's my dad, said Buffalo. He must have found our bait. Gotta run. Then he was gone. And Annabelle and I were left alone with our traps. We looked around at all the traps that we could not see. We used all our senses. Just when I'd about figured it out, Annabelle gasped. How she ever figured it out before I did, I'll never know.
We are the bait.
She whispered.